From hundreds, maybe even thousands of applications, the winners of Ontario's marijuana retail license lottery will soon be announced. And while they will need to be open by April the 1st or face stiff penalties, Ontario and other provinces are currently facing supply issues. Joining us now to discuss these issues, Caroline Mulroney, the Attorney General of Ontario. Good to have you here, and thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Let's start with the lottery itself. When are we going to get the results? I thought maybe you'd bring a drum and we could do it together, but clearly that's not how it's going to go down.
That's not how it's going to happen. The AGCO is administering the lottery. It's being overseen by a fairness monitor, and so we expect the results from the lottery soon, probably within the next 24 hours, certainly after the close of business today.
Okay, so it could be as soon as after the close, which is only about an hour away. The lottery itself, I had a lawyer who specializes in cannabis clients on in a previous show, and they were just wondering if it was really the best way to do this, in the sense that I know there's a limited number of licenses, and it's a supply issue, the 25, but at the same time, they were worried about the vetting, the 25 out of a drum. They might not be the 25 best business cases to run these stores.
Well, the people who are putting their names forward, that's an expression of interest. And then the AGCO will do the due diligence work that they need to make sure that they can qualify for a license. So there's extensive due diligence that the AGCO will conduct. So right now, they're putting their names in as an expression of interest, and then they enter, the next step is the licensing process. So we want to make sure that people who are awarded licenses are in it, can pass financial tests, do the criminal checks, background checks, make sure that they're in it looking for the public interest and the best interest of the people in their communities and so on. And so it is just the first step of the vetting that's going to happen. And in terms of the lottery, we wanted to make sure that, the government's not picking any winners. We wanted to make sure that we had stores around the province, but this is just the first step.
Could there be a case then, for argument's sake, say 5 of them just don't cut it? They get drawn and they're in the 25, but they just don't cut it. Would you do another draw? Are you committed to having 25 licenses in place by April 1st?
No, everyone will get their number and they'll just keep going down the list.
Also, if you're 26, that's like how I got a residence in Carleton in 1990.
Well, yeah.
I wasn't in the top, but I eventually got in the low. That makes sense to me. Supply, though. Supply is an issue, right? In terms of the number of licenses, and that's why you restricted it to this number. If you can solve some of those supply issues even as early as this year, would more licenses become available before the end of 2019?
So supply is the issue. When we announced our plan this summer, we announced that we would have an open retail system, private retail system, with no cap on the allocation of licenses. It was just going to be driven by market demand. But as we were watching the supply issues around the country, we realized that we couldn't do that. So we've announced this temporary system with 25 stores. So in terms of the next steps, it's up to the federal government, which is in charge of supply, to address these supply shortages that they're not just affecting us in Ontario, they're affecting provinces across the country. So once we see some kind of progress on that important point, then we'll be able to open up the market. Our goal is to get to an open allocation.
Open allocation. Are you optimistic that could happen by 2020? Some optimism, at least.
You'd have to ask the federal government. They're in charge of licensing producers. And so our job, as a province, our job is to set the retail system and to regulate it. In terms of getting supply to retailers, that job belongs to the federal government. So I hope that they're addressing it, but we believe that we needed to take this step. We needed to scale back our plan. People who are getting into the market are taking, it's a big step to get into this market, and we wanted for them to have some kind of commercial certainty over supply, and so that's why we have taken this step.
Is there a frustration for you as the Attorney General for the province that the whole idea here, the reason why Canada legalized recreational marijuana was to get it out of the hands, the proceeds out of the criminals, and get it into legitimate business? But right now, the way things are, we have a lot of indications that people are still buying from the black market because we haven't sorted out all the problems on the legal side.
Well, it's very frustrating. The purpose, as you said, of legalizing cannabis was to combat the illegal market. The only way to do that is to have enough supply to meet demand. So we're doing the best that we can to address the lack of supply. But in Ontario, you can buy legal cannabis through the Ontario Cannabis Store. So you can go online and purchase that, and that's where Ontarians should be buying their recreational cannabis, online, legally, through the OCS.
Price is a problem, too. We know supply and demand is a big part of that. StatsCan just out with some numbers this week suggesting, and this is a survey they did, but suggesting that the legal stuff can be up to 50% more than the black market stuff. So that seems to be a big hurdle to get past as well if you want to shift the consumer over to the legal space.
So when we were setting prices for the OCS, we worked really hard to make sure that we kept prices as low as possible. And that's one of the reasons we went with a private retail market, because the only way to combat the black market is to have prices low that can compete. And so that's our goal, is to compete with the product, with the illegal market. Pricing is important. But at this point, our biggest concern is supply.
Now, we still have problems, supply, and other issues dealing with the legalization that came last October. At some point this year, we're going to get the edibles, we're going to get the ingestibles. How does Ontario handle that? Would there actually be separate licenses to sell that, or would that be strictly in the hands of the Ontario government website?
So that's still to be determined. There's going to be a national consultation on that process, and we'll be doing work around edibles later this year. I think we will be beginning very soon. However, right now we're just focused on getting bricks and mortar stores up and running, and making sure that people who want to get into this market are able to do so with commercial certainty, which is what they deserve. At
some point under this government, would the LCBO be invited to play a role in selling cannabis to the people of Ontario?
No, the Ontario Cannabis Store is the retailer that we have, is the only public retailer of cannabis in Ontario. As I said, we've decided to move to a private retail market. So, the private individuals who put their names forward through this expression of interest are the next candidates for retail sales of cannabis. The LCBO will not be playing a role in the sale of cannabis in Ontario.
And I guess we can start expecting as early as 4 o'clock Eastern time, 45 minutes from now, perhaps we'll see the results of that lottery. All right, thank you for joining us, Minister.
Thank you for having me.
It's Caroline Mulroney. She's the Attorney General of Ontario.